Hi, this is Lenny Pfeffer, President of the Dorchester County Council, welcoming you to the Maryland Association of Counties Conduit Street Podcast, the show that discusses the issues and ideas shaping Maryland policy and politics today.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Conduit Street Podcast. This is Dom Butchko, your favorite member of the policy team, taking the mic this week. Today, we have planned a very special episode. We are going to talk about all things water. Joining me this week, we have Lisa Ochsenhirt from AquaLaw. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, good afternoon.
And we have Erik Michelsen from Arundel County's Department of Public Work. Hello, Erik.
Hey, Dom. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, before we dive in head first into the deep end of this week's topic, I'd like our listeners to get to know each of you a little bit better. Lisa, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your connection to Countyland?
Sure. I am Lisa Ochsenhirt, and I am very honored to be Deputy General Counsel for two statewide associations that are comprised of wastewater and stormwater managers across the state and the consultants that work with them, the Maryland Municipal Stormwater Association and the Maryland Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. And so we work with both those groups and to affect good policy and work on legislative issues and regulatory issues and that sort of thing as a group with these very dedicated, hardworking public employees.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lisa. And Erik, what about you? Tell me a little bit about your background. And before you do, I just want to tell our listeners, Erik is hands down one of the go-to experts on water infrastructure in Annapolis. So Erik, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I've been with Arundel County for about 10 years now. I work as a deputy director in the Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration in the Department of Public Works in Arundel County, and I'm also an environmental policy officer for the county. So I've been doing that job, which is managing county stormwater and restoration infrastructure for, like I say, about 10 years. And prior to that, I worked in the nonprofit sector as an executive director for a watershed organization locally in Arundel County.
So as our listeners can tell, you guys are experts, and MACo is very lucky to have you as part of our crack team of subject matter folks that we bring in during session. Now, this year in particular, we saw a lot of bills about water and the water infrastructure universe, but PFAS and stormwater restoration were particularly very big topics. I want to start with PFAS first. So can either of you pronounce and explain what the acronym PFAS actually stands for? And I want to give a quick shout out to our favorite Senator, Cheryl Kagan, who loves to know what acronyms stand for.
All right. Well, I'll take a try at this. It is per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. So there are literally thousands of them. They are compounds with a hydrocarbon chain and fluorine attached. They are widely used in manufacturing and in all kinds of products, including things like food packaging, carpet making, actually makeup, like the makeup I have on today. It has PFAS in it, non-stick cookware, and it also was used for quite a while as a part of an air firefighting foam. So in firefighting situations, part of that AFFF is what they call it, includes PFAS material as well. And they're sort of ubiquitous. They've been used for decades. And we're just starting to learn health-wise what the potential impacts are and starting to try and wrap our arms around how to manage them.
I knew about the firefighting foam and the cookware. I did not know about the makeup. Is that still true, or is that an old practice?
I think so. I think it's still in foundation and lipstick and all those kind of, it's anti-stick sort of slippery stuff like makeup and non-stick cookware and all of that.
All right. Yeah. Well, Lisa gets the bonus points because she could pronounce PFAS, which is more than Erik and I could do. So, Lisa, I am interested kind of in your broader perspective as you were telling us, about your background. You represent kind of multiple folks in the stormwater and wastewater industry. Can you talk a little bit about what the EPA did last week? It was about a day or so after session ended, and they put this really big announcement out about PFAS and PFAS monitoring. What does that mean for counties, and what does that mean for our water infrastructure?
Sure. And I will say that the MAMWA group has actually sort of expanded their focus in the last couple of years to look at some drinking water issues. And this is a huge one. So last week, EPA adopted maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs, which are limits for drinking water for two types of PFAS at 4 parts per trillion. And just sort of for reference, I found a great graphic on the internet today that says 1 part per trillion is equal to 1 drop of water in 20 Olympic-sized pools. So it is they're extraordinarily low levels. And then for 3 other PFAS constituents, they adopted MCLs at 10 parts per trillion, which means that over the compliance period, and I can kind of step through that in a second, public water suppliers are going to have to eventually comply with those levels. So they have EPA's laid out a schedule to sort of phase through this. The first 3 years is initial monitoring, so that'll go through from 2024 to 2027. Then for the next 3 years after that, 2027 to 2029, the initial monitoring results are going to have to be put in CCRs, which are the consumer confidence reports for drinking water that you probably see or get at your home. And they're going to have to start regular monitoring for compliance and start public notifications if there are violations of those numbers. And then beginning 2029, public water supplies are going to have to comply with those MCLs. So just for reference, EPA estimates that about 6 to 10% of the 66,000 public water systems in the country are going to have to address this. For the ones who do have to address it, they're estimating that's going to cost $1.5 billion. Maryland's done a lot. Yeah, go
There's
ahead.
some debate about that number, isn't there? Like, so I think I saw EPA said roughly, like you said, $1.5 billion, but then there's a national association that represents all of kind of the wastewater folks, and they're putting at, I think it was like at a high end of over $3 billion. Am I correct there?
That sounds right to me too. Yeah, I think I've seen that same statistic. Yeah, it's an expensive thing to have to do as a public water system. If you need to address it, you either have to find kind of a new source that isn't going to have potential PFAS impacts, or you're going to have to put some serious treatment on the drinking water system to be able to handle the new limits. The good news is MDE's been working on this a lot. They actually gave a presentation to the Senate. Do you call it Triple E or EEE? E3?
Actually, E-Quad, because they also
They did a presentation for eQuad at the end of January, and they've been looking a lot at this. They've collected a lot of data on drinking water. It's all on their website. They did a really great job of presenting all of this. And so they've given some sort of estimates about statewide impacts. According to that presentation, they said there may be something like 63 public water supplies that have exceeded the draft numbers back before they were finalized. 5 of them apparently already have an alternative source, and they're working with 14 of the 63 to find some funding for this. So MDE has really been on this for several years, but it's still a significant, huge undertaking for public water supply if this is an issue. So,
Erik, you're more of the boots on the ground. Your team is going to be one of the ones handling this day to day. What do you think of this EPA action, and what does it mean for Anne Arundel County?
So I think it's interesting. I think as our ability to actually detect these various chemicals and whatnot gets better, there becomes sort of this desire to monitor and to control. And certainly our drinking water utility, our wastewater utility folks, as well as our waste management operators at our landfills have been testing for PFAS for not for a long time, but for several years now, in terms of an awareness that it's a potential, emerging pollutant of concern. And so basically trying to better understand how this chemical, which, as Lisa had said, is ubiquitous, is making its way into the public infrastructure and how best to manage it. One of the things that our wastewater utility folks have been looking at for the past couple of years is trying to figure out how how might the PFAS be destroyed in the biosolids, which are where a lot of these pollutants aggregate through that wastewater treatment process, and have been looking at the idea of pyrolysis, which is essentially using a very high heat to destroy all of the pollutants in that biosolid and then create what's called a biochar, basically a carbon a byproduct that can be used in a variety of things. It seems to be one of the few ways to actually destroy the PFAS components. And so we're exploring that. I just recently came across an article from New York where there was a jurisdiction in New York, Moreau, New York, I believe is what the town is, that was looking at a similar kind of arrangement. And maybe unsurprisingly, they were getting a lot of local pushback about the idea of creating essentially an incinerator of a sort to basically break down these biosolids. So I think there's a lot of questions. I think there's a lot of considerations. I think about this in the context of, a lot of drinking water utilities, including our own, are under an arrangement where we've got to be replacing lead pipes, feeder pipes or parts of the service systems. And so there are a lot of competing requirements essentially for these dollars. And I think it's important for us as managers and as folks at the state and local level to figure out how do we prioritize these various concerns for public safety and address them in a way that doesn't bankrupt our capacity to do so. So
I'm really interested in something you said about the PFAS and using heat to break it down, because my understanding is one of the most dangerous things about this chemical is that it's so difficult to break down and it remains in the environment. Is heat the only way we can do it? Are there other methods? I know this is a big reason why it's just become such an important issue recently.
Lisa may have more insights on this front, but I know that, again, our wastewater utility folks were exploring a variety of options, and that seems to be sort of the most reliable way, I think, to be able to do this. Certainly just segregating it or aggregating it and then landfilling it or something like that isn't an ideal solution. I think breaking it down permanently is what we should be aiming for. So there aren't a lot of options on the table, as I understand it.
That was a perfect answer. Yeah, no, I think that we're so on the forefront of this and trying to figure out, and we have a lot of smart county people working on this, but trying to figure out how we're going to actually do this and address this for purposes of wastewater and biosolids. I mean, the drinking water maybe is a little clearer. I think they have some expensive but workable solutions for drinking water, but I think the wastewater community is just on the forefront of trying to wrap its arms around how to deal with this.
Yeah, clearly PFAS is going to be a major issue for all of us to contend with for some time. If I want to transition our conversation a little bit and talk about stream restoration and the Whole Watershed Act of 2024. Now, Erik, and same with Lisa, we have been through multiple stream restoration bills, not this year alone, but also in prior years. Erik, can you give me a little bit of a layman's explanation of kind of what stream restoration is and why is it important? I believe it has something to do with cleaning the bay, if I'm not mistaken. And what are some of the controversies? I know in a lot of the bills from the testimony, people have strong feelings about stream restoration. What's your take?
So stream restoration is a tool in the toolbox for local governments and for other folks who are working on efforts, as you say, to clean up the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries, to primarily reduce nutrients and sediment to the bay and our rivers. Stream erosion is a significant contributor of sediment to our downstream waterways and to nutrients as well. And so the restoration approach basically involves either stabilizing or creating opportunities for re-engineering those stream valley systems to be able to provide wetlands and other natural resources that strip stormwater and the water running off the landscape of nutrients and sediment before they get to those receiving waters. And so it's a critical piece of what counties are doing across Maryland, and really Maryland is at the forefront, I think, of local restoration efforts across the country, frankly. And it's a key element of what we're doing, although not the only thing that we're doing. I think it's stirred some controversy over the last few years, in part because It's not unusual for stream restoration or other practices to sometimes involve the removal of trees, oftentimes trees that people see as mature that may be in the areas surrounding their properties. And so the question has arisen, are the trade-offs of this practice worth the benefits? And I come down squarely on the side of yes, they are, but I think it's still up to the community and to others who are interested in the practice to make a compelling case on that front to the public at large.
Lisa, do you have any thoughts on that one too? Because I know this has been a big issue for your two associations.
We strongly support stream restoration. It's been blessed by EPA. It's been blessed by MDE. There's expert panels that work in the Chesapeake Bay program sphere that have gone through and looked at the science of it, and it's an approved practice. And I think Erik's got it right. It's an important tool, not the only tool for counties to comply with their stormwater permits. It's done well. I think it's a real benefit for the community and for the stream itself. I just echo what Erik said. Basically, they're good projects. They're more cost efficient than some other types of projects that counties might do. They have good benefits. I understand that there has been some controversy surrounding them, and Erik's mentioned the tree issue. But there are lots of good examples out there of projects that we should be sharing that have really accomplished a lot of good things. And again, it gets back to also trying to kickstart and get the bay clean as quickly as possible.
So I want to try and connect kind of this broader conversation now with the Whole Watershed Act of 2024, which was kind of this big stream restoration bill this session. For those listening, that would be Senate Bill 969, House Bill 1165. Now, when this bill came in, it was trying to readjust some of the philosophy of how we do many of these restoration projects. I remember the bill sponsors, Senator Elfreth and Delegate Love, pointing out that they wanted to try to kind of incentivize broader coordination between, instead of having multiple acts of restoration, you'd have a big effort, importantly with local jurisdictional sign-off, whether that's the county, the municipality, or both. And so there was a whole section in that bill about licensing, but I believe that was taken out. But there are some requirements that the three of us worked a lot on that has to do with stream restoration projects broadly, not just ones that would be financed through this. So Lisa, can you give me a bit of an overview of the highlights of the bill that actually made it to the governor's desk?
Sure. Speaking of kickstarting, so one of the big things that this bill does is to create a state fund and a program for trying to allow the state to put out an RFP and basically encourage projects that are going to advance acceleration of good work for the Bay and water quality compliance with the Bay. So that's one big piece. So they're going to have a whole new group of state folks that are going to be looking at projects every 5 years, I believe, and actually putting some money toward getting those projects done on the ground, which is a very interesting and exciting concept. And then the second piece is, as all three of us know, there was a definite interest in having some guardrails or some additional safeguards around stream restoration projects. So another piece of the bill that we did work really hard on, and I think it turned out really well, is a set of sort of parameters for what the local government, what the county has to do if it's doing one of these projects. It includes things like at 30% design, you have to sort of do a mailing to close by neighbors. At 60% design, you have to do a public meeting. I think a lot of counties already have a really good and robust sort of approach to working with the public on these projects. And I think we all agreed during the session that counties don't want to be in the position of getting far into a project, then finding out there's going to be a huge concern at the public level with their citizens. So this is just a little bit more of a structured approach to engaging with the community on those projects by having some sort of stair steps that you have to follow, and an interaction with MDE, of course, to make sure that public notice is happening, the public hearings are happening. I feel like I'm forgetting something else that's big in that list of requirements. And then having website information up on these projects, that's another big piece of it. So you can easily, as a citizen, log on to a website and see what's going on in terms of a project. Signage is also in there. So there's going to be a signage requirement. And all of this is meant to, like I said, it's meant to create some requirements to encourage that back and forth between the public and the locality as they're doing these projects.
I think you did hit all of the big ones. I will say for our listeners, we did put out an article today actually on the Whole Watershed doing a quick overview and breakdown, so you can find more details. We'll make sure that's in our show notes. Erik, though, I think you were involved in this bill even sooner than Lisa and I were. So I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts or if there's anything that we missed.
No, I think Lisa did a pretty thorough job covering it. I agree with her that, a lot of the elements that were incorporated into the bill really are best practices, many of which local jurisdictions have already been doing. Having them codified, I think, makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of the pushback and a lot of the resistance that is occurring or has occurred from some of these projects has been people feeling like they're out of the loop. And so the public notice requirements and those engagement elements hopefully will lead people to feel like they've been engaged at an earlier step of the process and maybe have had a chance to have their voices heard in terms of modifying or revising plans. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how things advance under this new legislation, and certainly the opportunity for local governments to be able to take care of that funding pot for these integrated projects that are looking at large scale combined concerted efforts is exciting to see how that's going to play out as well.
Definitely. Now, there is one last topic I want to highlight for our water episode today, and it's because I believe it's the biggest issue impacting Maryland that no one is really talking about, and that's the issue of sea level rise. Maryland's geography, it's unique because probably unlike any other state except for maybe Hawaii, no other state is more shaped or impacted by its coastline. The Chesapeake Bay is literally the cultural and economic beating heart of Maryland. And as climate change intensifies, we know that sea level rise will have a major impact on our coastal communities. For example, we know portions of Dorchester County will likely be underwater, major portions. Or in some of our agricultural communities that are next to the coast, a higher sea level will mean that there'll be more salt getting into the groundwater, and that will impact the soil. But to draw focus for a second, what does this mean for our critical infrastructure? And that's what I want to hear, your thoughts on. Erik, you in particular in Anne Arundel County, very, very coastal focused. Kind of what are your thoughts on how are you addressing this?
Yeah, it is a big issue. There are parts of Anne Arundel County that are extremely low-lying, southern Anne Arundel County and the Shady Side and Deal area, as well as parts of the MACo Peninsula, are only a few feet above sea level. And so this is something that we've taken really seriously. We're actually in the midst of a planning exercise with some funding that we got from FEMA through their BRIC grant program for coastal adaptation in the Shady Side Peninsula. Our Office of Planning and Zoning over the last 6 months has completed a sea level rise assessment for the whole county, basically really heavy on some of the GIS tools so that residents or the public can go in there and look at different scenarios and look at properties that are vulnerable. And so we're working in particular closely with our Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, headed by Matt Fleming, to look for opportunities for federal and state funding to advance some of those resilience efforts, and to really work hand in hand with communities throughout the county to explore adaptation strategies and to make sure that the county's critical infrastructure is protected as the climate continues to change.
And Lisa, what are you seeing across your membership? Because you represent kind of multiple counties that are along the coastline. Are there strategies or resources that folks should be aware of? Are there weak spots that we can kind of partner with our state and federal friends?
Well, let me start with where Erik kind of ended up, which is funding. I would love to see some additional state funding for these kinds of projects. Well, not just projects, but capacity building, studies, projects, the kinds of things that Erik was talking about. I'd love to see more money in the state budget for that. to encourage counties to actually be able to sort of start to take steps. I think in this year's budget, maybe there's $13 million in the Comprehensive Flood Management Program. And I think maybe, Arundel, you guys got some of that money in this year's budget for the Annapolis City Dock project. But the need has got to be, it's got to be so much higher than that, right? So just to the south, in Virginia, they have much more significant sort of funding pots to address this kind of work. And I think that, Maryland should be there as well, especially given what you said, Dom, about sort of unique nature of coastline and all of that. And it's not just sea level flooding, I don't think. I think there's a lot of inland flooding that's happening, unfortunately, dangerous inland flooding. And all of that needs to be tackled. And to do that, it's going to take funding. So more money would be good as a start. And then I also wanted to mention, there's work ongoing, if people aren't aware, on climate change issues at MDE. They put together, it was a bill a couple of years ago, but they put together a work group, a stakeholder group that's looking at the design manual for stormwater BMPs and potentially making changes to the requirements for stormwater to address the increasing amounts of rain we're seeing across the state. We have a couple of members that are MAMS is serving, but we also have a couple of members that are serving. And so there's a lot of really good conversation. It's a little bit of a slow process because I think MD is rightly trying to be very deliberate about rolling these ideas out. But if people are interested in more of that, there's a great MD website on the A-Storm effort. I don't know if Erik wants to say anything about that one, but MAMS is definitely watching MD's sort of efforts to start to integrate some of the new information we have on the higher levels of rain everywhere across the state into our policies.
Yeah, I guess I would just say with that MDE effort, it's and having come off a meeting last week from the A-Storm group, I think it's just going to be really important to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good on that particular case. There is so much work to be done in terms of revising design manuals and collecting additional data on precipitation intensity and these kinds of things. I'm hoping that MDE and the state legislature will move forward with sort of some incremental improvements in the near term with a commitment to continue to study and revise in the long term, because I think if we wait for having everything sorted out and nailed down, it's going to 5 or 6 years are going to slip away, and I worry that there's going to be an awful lot that's constructed or developed in that time frame without some of these new protections in place. So I think it's just going to be important to follow that development over the next year or so.
That's a great point. It's a great point that we don't want to go so deliberately and so slow that we miss an opportunity to actually start incorporating some changes that could be helpful, especially during these really heavy pop-up storms that flood lots of BMPs out because they happen so fast, is my understanding. Erik being the expert on this, but yeah, it's a great point.
Well, clearly, I think that we're going to have to do a follow-up episode on this and more topics because none of these are going to go anywhere. Lisa and Erik, I want to thank both of you for coming on and a thrilling conversation. Before we close, though, let me do a quick little plug for the MACo Summer Conference coming up, MACo 2024, #MACoCon. This will be August 14th through the 17th at the Roland Powell Convention Center in Ocean City, Maryland. Registration is open.
Yay!
And you can find all of our information on our website or in our show notes. Our website is mdcounties.org. Now it is time to wrap up this lovely little boat ride down Conduit Street. As always, if you've enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe. That way, all of these episodes will be delivered directly to the device of your choice. And feel free to send us a 5-star review. You can also follow us along on social media, Facebook, X, Twitter, and of course, the Conduit Street blog, where you get all of your Annapolis news. And so for Lisa, Erik, this is Dominic Butchko signing off, and we will talk to you soon.